Good morning. Here in New Zealand, I am talking to you about a topic that has been spoken about before, but I'm going to be talking about it from a slightly different perspective. And I'm probably going to present a lot of what I would say at the end of my video at the beginning of my video, which I know sounds ridiculous. Why am I going to present everything that I normally would talk about at the end of a video? Why am I going to talk about that first? And the reason is that my area of expertise is psychology. So I had planned to do a video like this a long time ago. We're going to go to the face. You might have noticed that there's no Dungeons and Dragons meme today. So it's not because I've lost my sense of humor or anything like that. It's got absolutely no reason. The reason is that I want this video to be useful for the people that it's being made for. And this video is being made for a specific audience. And I want them to fully understand what I'm trying to communicate. And I'm going to try to do that really, really clearly today. And I don't think it's going to be useful by using a D&D meme. Hi Matt, how's it going? So I will put the start time for this video down in the description, but they do go unlisted, so therefore you can only access it through your notifications, or if you're a Patreon, once it's no longer live. It will get edited down if you want to rewatch it at a later date. Hi Brian, how's it going? Also too, normally what I do is I present everything first and then I open up for questions and answers at the end of the live stream. So I'm going to do the same thing today. I'm going to try to be fairly succinct and clear about my communication about what I'm trying to say. Krito, how's it going? Greetings. Hi Oscar, how are you doing? Now, you wouldn't believe me, I imagine, but I had planned to do this video a long, long time ago. And it's only now that I finally figured out how I could present it in a way that would make sense. The Encounter Necromancer, how's it going? How's it going, Leon Garnett? All right, so let's get into it. Let's make it clear and communicate exactly what I want to say today. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but specifically the topic for today is why can't or won't my Dungeon Master be like Matt Mercer? Why can't they Dungeon Master or operate like Matthew Mercer in the game for Dungeons and Dragons 5e? It's perplexing. So my area of expertise is psychology, and I thought I would take a look at this from that perspective rather than from a gaming perspective, for those of you who are wondering what's going on. So this video is specifically for the players who are fans of Matt Mercer and the Critical Role team. Now, for people who aren't necessarily a fan of Matt Mercer or the Critical Role team and group, and you are a Dungeon Master, this is still a video that you will find probably quite useful, and I recommend sharing with other people because it's only going to be useful by sharing it with other people. So I know everybody has a whole bunch of questions, but I'm not going to answer the question in the video title straight away. And first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight down to the very deep, dark, and the core conclusion that I have in terms of this topic and what you need to understand. And it's around asking questions about yourself with regard to what it is you're trying to achieve. What do you really want? When you ask this question, why can't or won't my Dungeon Master be like Matt Mercer? What is it that you really want? And I'll tell you what I think you really want, and you'll let me know if I'm wrong. You want friends, like the ones that Matt Mercer has on Critical Role. You've seen it before. It's clear that they have a really good relationship, and that is actually something that is what you want. You want that. It's missing from your life. But is that the only thing that you really want? I would say to you that what you really want is you really want to be at the table with Matt Mercer and the Critical Role group. I mean, that would be like a dream. That's really what you want. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that actually deep down a lot of people really want to be sitting at the table with somebody like Matt Mercer and the Critical Role team, and not just be part of that Dungeons and Dragons game, but be part of that friendship that's been developed. What you're after is you want to be friends with Matt and Laura and Marisha and Sam and Liam and Travis and Ashley and Towson. I mean, that's ultimately every week when people show up to watch Critical Role on Twitch TV or watch it on YouTube, it's almost as if you're having a relationship with them and you keep coming back each week. And this is why there's so much fan art and there's so many comments coming through, and why people are willing to pay quite large sums to keep, supporting them. That's why they have supported the creation of an animated series. Totally makes sense. And this is because I would suspect there's something missing in your life. Look, a lot of us have something that's missing in our life that we couldn't get hold of. I think for maybe a few people, probably not necessarily for you or everybody, but that there is maybe a desire to be famous, and certainly a desire to maybe have your own Dungeons and Dragons group streamed online so that other people can see what you're doing. And you really want your Dungeon Master to lift their game, and while everybody else lifts their game, and just be as, everybody's trying to do it right now. Everybody is streaming their games on YouTube. Now, I may not have hit necessarily all of the possibilities in terms of why you really want this to happen, but I suspect that out of the ones that I've talked about, it's probably one of those. Deep down, that's what's going on. I wanted more out of my experience. I actually wanted much more out of my life and experience when it came to gaming. I came from tabletop war games. And I moved from tabletop war games to Dungeons and Dragons because I didn't have any friends. You don't really develop good friendships in tabletop wargaming. You develop competitors. And I wanted something that I could hang on to that would last. And it was actually really difficult to get into Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of the Dungeons and Dragons community when I was involved were actually very difficult to sort of approach. You couldn't find them. So actually finding somebody who was like-minded, who would allow you to be part of their group, it was all underground. You couldn't find anybody. And if you could find somebody, the chances are they didn't want to include you in their group because it would change the dynamic, and they were very precious about all of that sort of thing. I didn't really understand that, but I understand you wanting to have really good friends. I understand that totally, because don't all of us want something like that? Okay, so then somewhere along the line, as Critical Role picks up steam, somebody coins the phrase, the Matt Mercer effect. The Matt Mercer effect is coined, and then suddenly you get told, like, fans are expecting Dungeons and Dragons sessions to be like Critical Role. That's what the Matt Mercer effect is coined and phrased at. And it seems like people are attacking Matt Mercer for his dungeon mastering, and they're attacking Critical Role. And then suddenly you realise actually they're not attacking Matt Mercer and Critical Role. They're attacking you as a critter, as a fan of Critical Role. And what do I make of this? How do you make that feel right to you? Well, suddenly people are attacking me. Well, they must also be attacking Matt Mercer, and they must also be attacking Critical Role. And this feels totally unfair. Like people are just being bullies and harassing you and just making that barrier that existed between you and trying to play Dungeons and Dragons greater and bigger than it was before. So that is what's going on. And I know that's what a lot of people are thinking when they have to deal with these sorts of things, when they're asking that question. Now, I'm going to make it clear to you right now, for those of you who may have some questions about what I'm talking about and my motives, where is my perspective? How biased am I? I watch Critical Role. And I think Matt Mercer is one of the best dungeon masters in the world. I think Critical Role has certainly helped make Dungeons and Dragons much more popular than it was before, and has brought a lot of new people into the game, whereas Acquisitions Incorporated tended to appeal to people who were already playing Dungeons and Dragons, where Critical Role seemed to appeal to a newer audience. Totally get it. Now, that doesn't mean that I think everything I see on Critical Role is fantastic. And it doesn't mean that I think that Matt Mercer is perfect in terms of a dungeon master. There's no such thing. But that is my personal bias and perspective. So as I go through this, that is where I'm coming from. So don't think that I don't like Critical Role, because I do. I think it's fantastic. I think what Matt Mercer has done is fantastic. So let's answer the question that you came for in the first place. Why doesn't my dungeon master DM like Matt Mercer? Why can't they do it, or why won't they do it? And most of this is really, it's not won't. Often it's more can't. And I'll explain what I mean by can't, because there's so many things going on here. Matt Mercer is an experienced dungeon master with 20 years of experience. 20 years. He spent about almost 2/3 of his life dungeon mastering. That's how long he's been doing it for. But also, not only is he experienced, he's also an exceptional dungeon master, a unique dungeon master. You could say that all dungeon masters are unique, and that is in fact true. It is. They are all unique. But he is very, very unique. He is exceptional in terms of a dungeon master. So how is somebody supposed to duplicate that? There's only one Matt Mercer. And as far as I remember, we can't clone people legally. Not that we would want to even do that. I don't think that Matt would want that. Matt Mercer is also an expert storyteller. Expert. Not just a good storyteller, he's an expert storyteller. He wrote a book, and that book was demanded by fans, and they purchased that book. They sold a lot of copies. So in other words, what he's taken and the stories he's told have gone from a living storytelling process in Dungeons and Dragons into a book form. So that makes him an expert in storytelling. It's a simple fact. If people buy your books, you are now an expert in that field. Your dungeon master is not going to be able to compete with that. Matt Mercer spends lots of time preparing for game sessions. He says he spends about 1 hour of preparation for 1 hour of game time. Now, I would imagine it's actually probably a lot more than that. Now, I could be wrong, but even if it were exactly that time frame, he's got a 4-hour game or a 5-hour game, that's 4 or 5 hours a week that he's got to find to develop the game. The chances are, unless you don't have a job and you don't have any life commitments, and you have plenty of time, and you don't have a family or kids or anything like that, and you've got lots of disposable time, you'll never find a dungeon master who has the time to do that kind of preparation. It's probably very, very unlikely. So why does Matt Mercer spend so much time? He probably spends more time preparing than most dungeon masters do at his level. He does it because he feels he has to maintain the franchise and to maintain the expectations of the people who watch the show, watch Critical Role. Because it's not just a franchise, it's now a business for him. It was just a let's try it out, but it is now a business. So there's a lot of pressure on him to do this sort of stuff. He's put the pressure on himself as well. And chances are that for every hour that Matt Mercer spends preparing for his game session, any other person, any other dungeon master might find they have to spend 2 hours for every hour of preparation he spends. He probably has lots of shortcuts, like many experienced dungeon masters do. So going out the gate, there's a lot of barriers starting to develop here in terms of a dungeon master being able to do what Matt Mercer does. Matt selects the players for his table. He actually hand-picked those people to play at the table. And don't think that people haven't left, because the group has changed slightly. These are all his friends, or friends of his friends, so they're all connected. If there were issues, they would no longer be at the table. But they are all his friends. They're all very, very close. Not only that, all of his friends that are playing at the table are some of the best voice actors and actors in the world. The pros, the professionals, they do this well. They've got lots of training. They know how to deal with improvised play. That's where their training is at. So they have a lot going. Not only that, Matt is possibly one of the best professional voice actors in the entire game. In terms of anime and video games, he's possibly one of the best voice actors there are currently anywhere. Now, that wasn't achieved by just hard work. I'm sure that Matt Mercer spent a lot of time working really hard to get to that level of skill, but there's something about Matt that made it work, because Matt's probably more well known than everybody else sitting at the table that he's playing with. That's a simple fact. Probably more well known than anybody else. So there's something about Matt that makes him stick out. Now, Matt has an awful lot of help when he's sitting at the table dungeon mastering. He gets a lot of help at the table from his players who play along with him, who accept the hints, the tips, and they play along with him with everything. He has a studio team to make sure that your experience when you watch what's going on sounds good. If the sound was poor and the video quality was poor, you would never watch. And you probably wouldn't have quite the same view of Matt Mercer. Or maybe you would. Who knows? There's sponsors, there's fans, fan art, fan comments. It's all driving it. So there's a lot of help being placed in Matt's hands. You've got to remember, it's not just him. It's his players. It's the studio team making sure everything's working right. It's all the sponsors so they can keep doing this. Otherwise, they would have to go back to their normal jobs. And if at any point they lose their sponsors or the fans start to dwindle and fall away, then he would not be able to keep this up. So there's a lot going on to make it possible for him to do what he's doing. Now, I know one of the things that a lot of people really, really enjoy is the fact that in his game, the players' characters are linked into the adventure. Their backstories, each character has their own story. This is actually very advanced for a dungeon master. I know because I've done it, and I've always found it problematic. Did I do it successfully? I don't know. I don't know necessarily that I did it successfully. I can tell you that some players at my table were really happy with what had happened. Some were sad and others were dissatisfied. Now here's the thing. Here's the big question when you start asking yourself those sorts of questions about, if I'm going to have that kind of really close, it's very difficult to tie the main story in with players' characters. So all of the zero session that takes place with Matt Mercer and the players, and I'm sure there is something like that, you never see that. You never see any of that. I found that players, as a general rule, aren't ready for the big question when it comes to playing at this sort of level. This is very advanced play. Are you prepared as a player to have your character die or end or finish the campaign or have something unexpected happen to them or some unexpected turnout? And I would say that I think most players are not necessarily ready for that. You'll find that Matt's players are. They're pretty accepting of everything that's happened, even when they were enjoying playing the character. They'll take all of that on board. It's actually very, very difficult for a player to understand, if I like this character and suddenly, the Dungeon Master says, well, the character's dead and it can't be brought back. And this happened with Vax. I remember what the fan base was like when Vax and Mollymock died. They're not coming back. There was a lot of people who were really angry, a lot of people who were really sad. Fine, it's all right to be sad, but angry? This is really the issue, I think, for a lot of people who don't fully understand what's going on here. Because when you play role-play games, it goes straight to your heart, and it's very, very hard to be pulled in and for it to become an intimate experience, not just with the people you're with, but with yourself. Because you're really using all of that emotion, and if you don't have enough emotional maturity, it can be really, really painful. So I think that covers what's going on for anybody who's asking that question. And I really hope this has been a useful video for you in some way. I hope that it has answered questions that you might have had that you weren't too sure about, or you felt that nobody else fully understood. And trust me, I do understand what's going on. And hey, I'm not going to say anything else. I normally do my outro, but I'm not today. Hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone, people. I am going to bring my face back, okay? I just need to grab a drink of water and some glasses. And let's have a talk, because this is not really about blame. And if anybody felt like I just dropped a spoiler and ruined things for them, I do apologize. But I really felt like it was really hard for me to come up with a way of just talking about this topic, because every time I tried to form this topic, it was more about the Dungeon Master, and I realized, actually, no, that this topic is not about the Dungeon Master. It's not, it's certainly part of the problem with this has always been that the D&D community is very hard to get into. It's certainly a lot easier to be part of the D&D community than it was before. I know in New Zealand it's less underground than it was before, because it's become a bit more open, and I believe that it's happening all around the world. So I guess when you look at, my Dungeon Master can't do what Matt Mercer does, there's so many different reasons going on. But ultimately, it's what I talked about originally, which is it's what's going on for me and how I can fill that gap. And you can fill this gap with somebody else who isn't Matt Mercer and who isn't part of the Critical Role team. Honestly, you'll find people out there, you look hard enough, you will find people who are in the same spot, who feel the same way, who understand where you're coming from, and are willing to form that kind of bond with you. And it does last. If you find the right people, it will last a long time. Matt, I'm not too sure what you're talking about here. So let's go through this chat. Hi, how's it going, Joe? Matt's here. Who's the blonde in the middle? Ashley. Okay, cool. Thank you for answering that question for him. That's good. Excellent. So look, for anybody who has a question, and if you have any feedback that you really want to sort of share and say, look, I honestly, what I really want is, I still feel like people don't understand where I'm coming from, then let's talk about it and work through it, because I'm hoping that this video will be understood by those people who are asking that question, whether it's verbally or it's still in their head, and for those people who are trying to help people through that by showing this. Hopefully this explains what's going on, and you're not unique in this. Even those people who've been playing Dungeons and Dragons before Critical Role, we were all going through the same sorts of things where we felt like we were missing something. I like to coin the concept of playing Dungeons and Dragons as like weekend warriors. During the week you do the hard yucca, whether it's at school or at work, and all the things that you have to deal with in the world that just don't feel like, it all feels too much, and you need to escape. And that's what Dungeons and Dragons is very much about. It's about escaping and dealing with all those things that you really need. And that's why I always voiced it. My friends, we are weekend warriors. Or we are, maybe we don't play on the weekend, but it's essentially, you know what I'm talking about. We take a small part of our life, and for a fraction of time, we are able to be somebody that we are not normally able to be in the real world. Mario, hi Mario. Don's here. I think Mercer is an amazing role player, but not very good DM. I think you'll find that, Don, you're welcome to have your opinion, but I think we can't dispute that Matthew Mercer is in my opinion, is a very good dungeon master. I also think that Chris Perkins is a very good dungeon master. Whether he runs the game the way you like it, remember, Critical Role is only one way of playing the game. And there are lots of different ways of playing the game. Some would appeal to me and probably to you, and some will not appeal to me and will not appeal to you either. And that's just how it is. And you find the people that work for you, and then hopefully you can stay with them. Leon, how dare DMs worldwide not be like Matt Mercer? Despicable. Okay, all right. Well, we don't need to get too snarky about it. The same with players who dare they not be like Vox Machina. Well, we don't want to. I mean, the whole idea is not to. We don't want to duplicate what Critical Role is doing. What we want to do is we want to create our own personal experience, because do you know there's a reason why a lot of people don't live stream their games. I know a lot of people do, but there's a lot of reason why people don't do that. It is an intimate experience with your friends, and we don't want to share that with the rest of the world. I don't, my friends do not want to be on camera when we play, and I totally understand that. And so you've never seen me Dungeon Master because the people I play with don't want to be on screen. That's their personal space. I just need a drink of water. Pardon me. For those of you, I can't stay too long, but I will try to get down the bottom of this list as quickly as I can. I'm going to my mum's birthday gathering, so I'm collecting up. You might say I'm going and seeing the family, and we're getting together, and we're having some personal time. The really important stuff. Last night was incredible, so I had to cry. Joe, I totally get it. I keep watching it and I can see what's going on. Yes, the cosplay was very impressive, and I laughed a lot. It was hard not to laugh. It is interesting how the shit jokes never end. The poop jokes never end. It feels like I'm sitting at my family table, and toilet humour was one of the most common things to come up. Yeah. I don't know where that's coming from, Don, but okay, all right. Okay, is it Monkey Work? I think this request only comes from people who haven't played D&D, and their first introduction was Critical Role, and so they assume it the correct manner. So yeah, I mean, I think often, I had a lot of people who would come from having watched Critical Role, and they'd come into my public games, and they say, look, my first experience, the reason I'm here is because I saw what was going on in Critical Role, and I really want that. And they'll say, the first thing they'll say is, do you do voices, Fred? Do you do character voices? And I will always tell them, I can do a character voice for a very short period of time. I can never maintain it because my voice cracks and breaks. As you can tell right now, I've only been talking for less than half an hour, and already it's winter, fair enough, and I'm a bit sick. But as a general rule, if I try to use a voice, it actually requires a lot of training to be able to do that for any length of time. Otherwise, you lose your voice. So I can never maintain it for any length of time. Yeah, they want the voices, they want the charisma, and they believe that if Matt can do it, then anybody else can. But I feel like it's actually, when people sit down and watch Critical Role, what they're wanting is they really want to be there with Matt and his mates. I think that's really, they want to be there with them. MM has made videos. Yeah, look, Matt would not disagree with anything that I've said. I think, and he's gone publicly and he's said this before, that Critical Role and Matt have always been about trying to embrace new people into the game and embrace people who want to play the game. And he doesn't want people to feel like that's what's going on. So it's not Matt's fault, and it's not Critical Role's fault. It is a product of, as I said, and it's not even to a large extent the person who's come from Critical Role into Dungeons and Dragons. It is the fact that there's something that you needed that you just don't get, and you want to be able to duplicate that and get that in some way. Yeah, well, look, to be honest, being paid to do this sort of thing, it's if Matt and Critical Role were doing voices for video games and cartoons, they would be getting paid. They kind of have to do this. You can't just go off and do it and be a freebie. There isn't time, when you've got those kinds of jobs, it has to pay in some way. So I don't think that's really the issue. Firelord Singer, how's it going? Hey, look, if you guys have questions, go #question. I will burn through these comments as quick as I can. You think it's silly to compare DMs? Yes, of course. Look, every DM is different. And every DM's style is dependent on the people my style changes depending on the people that are playing at my table. And every Dungeon Master, you're right, has different strengths and weaknesses that they can play to. I really do like Matt Colville's games. It feels much more like the kind of game I'm used to seeing myself. Although even Matt is very different to some of the Dungeon Masters I've sat with or the kind of Dungeon Mastering I do. Because often when I play the game, I will sit back and let the players do most of the work. Do you know what I mean? I don't, when I speak, I try to say it very quickly before they interrupt me with some sort of comment, because they want to move things along, and unless of course you're dealing with people who really sort of sit back and just want everybody else to do all the work. The Encounter Mancer. Most of my DMs have been either Nerd King, charisma type. Yeah, okay. Draws people to the game. Stat nerds. Yes. A lot of, and see, this is book memorizing, enables lots of crazy characters. See, that is a very specific type of Dungeon Master, right? And I totally understand your frustration with somebody. I mean, charisma is great. When a Dungeon Master has lots of charisma, that's fantastic. It's lovely to be around. And Nerd Kings, if only the Nerd Kings were Dungeon Masters, would be losing out. I have seen people who are not good with the rules, and they run the most magnificent games I've ever seen. They do things that I could not even imagine other Dungeon Masters even considering. This channel has always been about trying new things. I've said it before. Always try everything at least twice before you decide to chuck it out. And that means not just for Dungeon Masters, but also for players. You've got to give everybody a chance, particularly if you're dealing with a new Dungeon Master at your table. Joe, you want to be, a lot of people have been really striving, that the bar has been lifted, right? So for a Dungeon Master, it feels like a lot of pressure to try to be as good as Matt Mercer or as good as Chris Perkins, who also does an extremely good job in that area. Jeremy Crawford has started to step in. We're seeing a lot more of Jeremy Crawford. We never saw him before. He was always running the game for the design team, and we didn't even see what was going on. And I was looking at Acquisitions Incorporated and Critical Role, and what I noticed is that the number of people watching it is about the same. The only difference is that I feel like there are a lot more new people watching Critical Role, and a lot of the old guard, or those people who've been in the game, playing the game for a while, watch Acquisitions Incorporated. And then there's a whole bunch of people who hate both versions of they don't like Critical Role and they don't like Acquisitions Incorporated. And that's all fine too. Don, I watch it, I love it. There are times when it's, I feel like, okay, this is actually much better if I was part of that experience and it was sitting with my friends doing it. It's about forming connections with your friends and people. And when I sat down with a lot of people who were coming from Critical Role, having watched it and playing at my table, I made it clear to them, look, I don't care about the rules, and I don't care about how you play your character. And I know a lot of people despise the fact that I say this. I always say, look, the only thing I care about is, one, that everybody has a good time. Everybody, not just one, two. You can't, if one person's having fun but other people don't like what you're doing, that's a problem. The only thing I care about is the integrity of the group. I want everybody to think of it as, when they step in here, you will all eventually, I'm looking for new friends, and I'm looking for you to find new friends. And that's what happens. If you do it right, and you find the right people, and they understand that, and you you will get somewhere, and you will find the people that you need to be with. And that's really important, right? It's all about connection. Yes, CR does appeal to a new audience. And I feel like, Critical Role is very much for we've talked about player styles before, right, on the channel. I've talked about player styles, and one of them is the actor. And certainly the actor style of role play, that's what Critical Role really appeals to, because they're all actors, right? So it makes a lot of sense. So therefore, a lot of other types of play like exploration or the instigator. No, to be fair, I feel like, right now, in the past, Sam Riegel was the instigator. He was also an actor, and there's a combination of different styles going on there. Right now, it's Laura Bailey who is the instigator. You'll notice she's the one who comes out with the quirky, funny comments. She's the one who does things that pushes the story forward, and when she's not doing that, Travis is often doing that himself. And everybody does, but there's elements, but they are very heavy in terms of the actor style of role play, in terms of player style. Yes, I feel like Chris Perkins is underrated, and it's interesting. He is still very visible on YouTube and on live streaming. He's still around, but he's pulled back a lot because I imagine he gets a lot of work, right? And so he's pulled back and allowed people to have their own space, which is a really good idea. I think that's a sensible thing to do. Crito, hopefully I got your name correct. I apologize, Crito, if I got your name wrong. You began watching Critical Role to learn how to D&D, how to D&D is played. Oh, so yeah, see, a lot of people do. They go and they watch the big stream, and the big stream is Critical Role. If anybody's going to watch anything in the week, and it's a live stream, it is probably, and it's play. The game is being played. It's probably going to be Critical Role. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. MM is a great DM, but his players help him. Yes, they do. I mean, how many times have they helped him along? I mean, there are times when they will mess with him as well, but they really do. They add on to what he is putting forward, and they show how often has Matt had to repeat himself. Because usually there's somebody taking notes. Usually there's somebody who's remembering what's going on, and if they don't remember, somebody's flicking through a book trying to find information. And it really does make it easier if you have players who are really engaged. I know, for example, there's a player, he's dungeon mastering in my home group right now, and he takes excellent notes. I don't take excellent notes. I'm the guy who tends to draw maps. Or I'm the person who will be trying to figure out how to pull everything together, because I will often play a spellcaster of some kind. Yes, yep, that's right. Let's not forget how important the players at the table are. Okay. He has no consistency. I've seen him change the rules midway through. See, here's the thing, Don. It's actually all right to change the consistency. Do you know what happens when Matt Mercer makes some error? Yes, you've got 50,000 people watching you on Twitch TV, and everybody is perusing and assessing how you run the game. And none of us who are playing Dungeons and Dragons in our own homes have to contend with that nonsense. And so Matt has changed the way he plays, and he will change the things dependent on how the story plays out. There's lots of different reasons for doing it. I don't actually see there being an issue with that. I mean, some dungeon masters don't like that, and if that's the sort of thing, and you don't like the fact that there isn't consistency with the rules, the day will come, and it's been said. I mean, it's supposed to be a quote from Gary Gygax, right? That someday the dungeon master will understand that you don't need the rules, and the rules are, whatever needs to make everything work. A lot of people keep thinking that Dungeons and Dragons is a true game of skill. And I've said it before, it is really not. Yes. I mean, the fact that Critical Role and Matt's DMing has been so entertaining has been magnificent. Okay, so I'm going to keep scrolling down here. Let's get past a lot of this. You can agree that's what matters is that they have the blast. Yeah, that's right. The experience is that everybody loves coming back and they're all developing that friendship and they're all working together and having a good time. And really, that's the most important thing. Yeah. Yeah, so I know the game you're talking about, Krito, the solo game. But see, that solo game, did it have the same magic as the group? You know, this is the thing, is, you know, there's a point where the size of your group actually makes a big difference. Now, Stephen is a very good player, and he was very new to Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but he grasped the concept, and Matt ran with that. Yeah, nobody would work. Truthfully, if anybody watches my games, one, I would probably get banned from Twitch TV and YouTube because of the language that gets used, and there's no limit to what has been said at the table at times. And once one person starts on that road, it just deteriorates into just bedlam. So I gave up in the end because I had to try and censor everything. Particularly when I had one player in the group, and she was from Germany, and mixed with everybody else, it just turned into dynamite. But yeah, okay. It didn't discover CR until 6 months ago. Okay, halfway through the CR. All right. Matt's DM skills were pretty good from the very get-go, to be honest. But you know, everybody has their own opinion, and it's all fine. And your opinion's fine too. It's not about blame. Not about blame. Let's forget about that. Not about blame. Now, I feel like I may have skipped past a lot of people. There are a lot of people in here. I am really trying hard to stay with the live chat. I may have to sort of whip past here. So I apologise if I don't see your question or your feedback, because I haven't been able to spot it, but there are so many comments coming through. And I'm just going to look for @Fred or #question. Hi Sheep, how's it going? Zcam, great advice as usual. I'm glad it was good advice. I really hope this is useful for players to help understand what's going on for them, and for dungeon masters who are trying to help players work through this. You know, don't kick them out. Don't kick them out. Just give them some time to figure out what's going on for them, because it is the same sorts of problems we went through ourselves. Hi Raven. I don't know what it's about. Yeah, it's not for everybody. It is not for everybody. Totally understand. If it's not for you, it's fine. But like I said, this is yeah. I don't know why that blocked that, but Dr. Kobotnik, you're... okay, it's the word. Right, look. Now, YouTube does not like swearing, so I'm going to remove it, okay? I've read it, but I'm going to remove it, because that'll cause me a whole bunch of problems. Try to keep your language under control, please. Okay. I have to go. I really do. I've got a phone call coming through. So look, have a good day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for everybody who showed up. I hope this has been helpful to you. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.